bottom of the barrel for his speaker series. No, good to be here tonight. And if you want to open up, I bet you'll never guess where we're going to be. Uh, Hebrews 11. Uh, so, by faith, the people is the topic for tonight. Um, this July we celebrated the 250th anniversary of the beginning of this country, right? And I kind of got to thinking about the the some of that, and one thing that kept coming back in my mind as I was thinking about by faith the people was that phrase of we the people, which is how the preamble to the Constitution of the United States of America begins. And I don't know how much you know about it and how much you remember from your American history classes from way back when, but um, I bet you don't know who was the primary author of the preamble. It wasn't. He was on the committee. So it was actually written by a committee appointed on September 10th, 1787. That committee included Rufus King, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, William Samuel Johnson, and the primary authorship was given to a man named Gouverneur Morris. Anybody know that name? I read it and I was like, I don't even remember coming across it. Governor spelled Gouverneur, so a little bit different spelling, but he was given the primary authorship as you do the research, and this came straight from it wasn't Gemini or Chat GPT. This came straight from the the Library of Congress or whatever. So I was like, wow, okay. I've never heard that name. But this was written about 11 years after the Declaration of Independence was issued. So you're looking at 1787, of course, founding of the country 1776. So you got about 11 years after the Declaration of Independence is when the Constitution was written. I didn't know this either, but it was originally drafted to begin with these words: "We, the people of the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia." Um, so that was the original draft. Then it goes through this committee that was established that I just mentioned. And this was the Committee of Style is what they were called. And that's when it was edited to the version we know today. And that version goes like this: "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." I should have done that from memory, but it's been since 8th grade since I had to memorize that. So after that version that we know today was established, one of the big debates, obviously, was all those 13 states were listed in the original draft and then removed and replaced with "We the people of the United States." And so there was a little bit of debate over the tone of this one nation being used in place of people of the states. But it was John Marshall who declared that both state and federal governments derive their powers from the people, and each was to act according to the powers given it. And so here we are, almost 240 years after the Constitution was written, still referencing the rights of every American citizen set forth in that document. It's amazing how long that document has withstood the test of time. But you think about it, and I want you to put yourselves in the shoes of the people of these different states. And maybe you're one who is a representative from one of those states coming together to form this Constitution. It required the people of different states coming together as a collective nation to surrender their own desires to produce a common law that united a country. And so just imagine if you're on this committee, are you willing to sign this national document as one of the members of the 13 states? What if this new nation becomes a kingship or takes supreme authority over the states? Do you have some reservations? Like, we've worked so hard to establish our state of Delaware. Is this document going to supersede that? And am I going to lose my voice as a state? There's probably a lot of nerves, a lot of tension, a lot of thought and process that goes into establishing this document that's going to govern the United States for the next 240 years. So when you read in Hebrews chapter 11, we're in verse 29 and 30 tonight, but it says, "By faith the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land, but the Egyptians, when they attempted to do the same, were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days." And so I want to look at those two stories tonight. They're pretty lengthy, so we may not have time to read through all of them, but I do want to look at them in their context rather than, sometimes we just kind of give that surface level paraphrase of it, but I do want to look at those in context. So first, let's go to Exodus chapter 14. Exodus chapter 14, and want to look at the crossing of the Red Sea. So I'll pick up just in verse 1 in Exodus 14. It says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of,'" I'm going to butcher these, but "Pi-Hahiroth between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord.' And they did so. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed toward the people, and they said, 'What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us?' So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel, while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them and camped at the sea by Pi-Hahiroth in front of Baal-Zephon. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, 'Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness.' And Moses said to the people, 'Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent.' The Lord said to Moses, 'Why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they shall go in after them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host, his chariots and his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten glory over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the angel of God who was going before the host of Israel moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went to the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and of cloud looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen of all the hosts of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians, so the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. So when you're kind of going through that passage, I know we're always used to seeing this on video right before Easter with the Ten Commandments, right? I mean that one comes on every Saturday night right before Easter, usually Channel 7. And so, even as a young kid, this is what always the imagery that goes through my mind. But then when you read through this in Scripture, there's a lot of little key points that you see and that you realize that maybe I didn't catch that before. First of all, who receives the glory for this event? It's said a couple times, but who is receiving the glory here? The Lord. Yeah, verse 4, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. He will pursue them, and I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host. Uh, the, you know, and I think that's important for us to remember that my faith should result in God's glory. Not my faith results in my glory. My faith results in God's glory. And we're reminded of that here. Do you ever have any grumblers in the church? Not here at Harrisburg. Oh, okay. Y'all are. Ah, there it is. The classic preacher going too long joke. You know, do you ever have any who don't want to try anything new for progress of the church because they're afraid? Um, I think these are common feelings, these are common approaches, and we don't see it any differently with the Israelites here. When you look in verse 11 and 12, we get a glimpse of how many of them were probably feeling. They said all these things, is it because there are no graves you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we tell you to leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve them than to die in the wilderness. Um, and so it's real easy for us to grumble and complain, and and the Bible speaks to that as well, that we shouldn't be grumblers and complainers, but oftentimes that's kind of our first instinct is to grumble, complain, or even somebody's wanting to do a service project or do something in the church to grow the church, to progress the church forward. And how often are we saying, I don't want to do that, I'm not comfortable doing that, or I haven't ever done that before. It may be a new ministry or a new service project. It may put me in an uncomfortable situation. There's a lot of fear that can build up in those types of situations. And so I think we need to be mindful of that. Um, and we can get an example of really how not to approach it from these comments that the Israelites were making to Moses. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where there seemed to be no good option? So again, like we've already talked about Moses in this hall of faith, right? Like he was one of the characters early on in the lesson series. So we're not really talking about Moses, we're talking about the people and the people's response. And I think that we as a church body can relate to the the people a lot. Um, but have you ever found yourself in a situation where there seemed to be no good option? I think if I'm in their shoes, I'm kind of, I'm between the sea and the Egyptian army coming after me. Like, here's Moses. He's come back to Egypt. We've gone through these series of plagues, where Pharaoh finally caved and said, "Yes, you can flee." Then I'm one of the Israelites who is leaving Egypt. I'm following Moses. I might remember him from was it 40 years prior to that he was in Egypt. I might remember him from those days, but most likely, I mean, he's just the guy that's come into town that's pleading with Pharaoh to release us. And so now I'm following him out of Egypt into the wilderness. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just following. And he brings me up to the Red Sea, and now I'm looking out across this sea, and I've got the Egyptian army coming behind me. Um, that's a pretty difficult situation for the people who are just following, um, not knowing really where they're going or where their destination is. They just know that they're leaving captivity. Just thinking about those difficult situations, those rock in a hard place, those sea and Egyptian army type of places. Um, I used to do some caving back when I was younger. There was a guy we grew up in the youth group together, and he always wanted to go caving, and he would get me and a few other guys to go with him. First time I went out, it was a cave that was just on some private property around Mountain View, and he just knew the landowner, and so you could get into this cave and explore it for 3 or 4 hours, and it was just natural. No Blanchard Springs where you've got lights and sidewalks and handrails and elevators. There's none of that. It was like true, like spelunking down into a cave and navigate. But I remember the first time we were going, I was driving a Dodge Magnum. um, I don't know if you remember the Dodge Magnum. It's like a Dodge Charger, except it's more of a hatchback. Looks kind of like a hearse. I thought this was cool back then. This was like '07 or something. It was maybe not cool. So I was in a Dodge Magnum. I had some friends in that vehicle with me. The other vehicle we were driving was a Mitsubishi Eclipse. Um, so if you ever follow a GPS in the Ozark Mountains, one thing I learned that day was if you're going on a gravel road, you need to have a little ground clearance. Because we started down this gravel road, and I'm going along just fine, but then it starts to go down the mountain. And when it starts to go down the mountain, we went down a pretty steep embankment, and we get toward the bottom, and the road's washed out. Well, I'm rear wheel drive, low riding to the ground. There's no backing up the hill. And I'm going to bottom out if I go through this washed out road. And it was one of those situations where I wasn't sure what to do. And I just remember I'm just going to stop. So we just put our cars in park. We thought about it for a little bit, and then I just said, we need to rebuild the road. So we spent 45 minutes grabbing sticks, rocks, whatever we could find to fill in these ravines that had been washed out of the road, just enough to get our tires on so we could cross and keep going. Um, but it was a moment like that I thought of that I would imagine similar type of feelings are being felt from the Israelites here. And I love Moses' reply. He says, "Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent." What a powerful message, right? Like, how often do we think that I'm in this situation, I've got to get myself out of it? I'm between a rock and a hard place, and I've got to figure out how to accomplish getting out of this. As the people, Moses gives them this reassurance that it's not you fighting this battle, it's God fighting this battle, and he's going to fight for you. You stand still. You don't be afraid. You stand firm and watch his salvation. That's a really powerful message for all of us. I'm going to end up running out of time. I know it. Let's go over to Joshua chapter 6 and look at this other story that's referenced in Hebrews. Joshua chapter 6 is the story of Jericho and the fall of Jericho. So, let me just read a little bit, starting in verse 1. Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all the men of war going around the city once. Thus shall you do for 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, everyone straight before him." So Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord." And he said to the people, "Go forward, march around the city, and let the armed men pass on before the ark." And just as Joshua had commanded the people, the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the Lord went forward, blowing the trumpets, with the ark of the covenant of the Lord following them. The armed men were walking before the priests who were blowing the trumpets, and the rear guard was walking after the ark, while the trumpets blew continually. But Joshua commanded the people, "You shall not shout or make your voice heard, neither shall any word go out of your mouth until the day I tell you to shout. Then you shall shout." So he caused the ark of the Lord to circle the city, going about it once. And they came into the camp and spent the night in the camp. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord walked on, and they blew the trumpets continually. And the armed men were walking before them, and the rear guard was walking after the ark of the Lord, while the trumpets blew continually. And the 2nd day they marched around the city once and returned into the camp. So they did for 6 days. On the 7th day they rose early at the dawn of day and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. It was only on that day that they marched around the city 7 times. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. And the city and all that is within it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab the prostitute and all her who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent. But you keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, lest when you have devoted them, you take any of the devoted things and make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction and bring trouble upon it. But all silver and gold and every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord. They shall go into the treasury of the Lord. So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. Then they devoted all in the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys, with the edge of the sword. It's interesting. One thing I caught on here is, you see the instructions. In order to conquer Jericho, this fortified city, and they say it was one of the most secure cities in any of these pagan nations. But the instructions are: march around the city walls once. 7 priests bear 7 rams' horns before the ark. Do this for 6 days. On the 7th day, march around 7 times. Then have the priests sound the trumpets, and then all the people shout. Have you ever been asked by a boss at work to do something that seemed ridiculous? And you get to be the one to deliver that message to your team. I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but those are sometimes really uncomfortable conversations to have with a team, especially when you don't understand fully the instruction that your boss has given you. Because your team always has questions, and their first question is why? Why are we doing this? And if you don't understand the why, it's really hard to explain that, right? Like, we've all been in some similar type of situation. So again, put yourself in the shoes of not Joshua, put yourselves in the shoes of the people. Here's the instructions. We're going to do this. How do you think Joshua felt in communicating that plan? But two, what I find interesting about it is nobody questions this. Like, my first question, if I'm the people, would be, why? What strategy of war is this, that we're going to just march around the city and then we're going to do it 7 times on the 7th day and then blow a trumpet and shout? What kind of strategy is that? Do what? Because the Lord said so. Yeah, and Joshua is communicating this message from the Lord. But if I am the people, that if I'm in that crowd, I'm asking that question, why? But nobody questions this plan. The people just follow. And if you think about it, and I did a little research on this, uh, I guess maybe a tradition. This was a common tradition in war times in this period of time. It was often known as a victory march. Isn't that interesting? The victory march comes first. And that's one of the things that just stood out to me as I was reading through this passage. It's right there in verse 2. The Lord says to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its king and mighty men of valor." God's already won this battle. They're doing the victory march. And I just think that's so fascinating when you look at it that way. So the victory has already been won. And so it is by faith that the people are following the victor. And so when you think about that, doesn't that sound kind of familiar? Aren't you singing some songs in your head already? The ones that came to my mind were, of course, Victory and Jesus. Battle belongs to the Lord. Um, you may not sing this one, but just battle belongs. It's the Phil Wickham version. Uh, like we sing these songs all the time. This is the Lord's battle. The Lord victory has already been won in Jesus. And so we are by faith following the victor. It's our responsibility to follow in faith, understanding and knowing that God has already won. The other thing I see in here is that their persistent faith pays off. If I'm the people and I'm marching around the city, I do this day one and nothing happens. I do this day two, nothing happens. Day three, I'm starting to think like, is something really going to happen here? By day four, I may be questioning, like, is this the right thing? Are you sure, Joshua, that this is the instruction that the Lord gave you? Obviously, I'm that guy that's kind of questioning things. Um, but the people continue on. They press on. And that persistent faith, they didn't quit on the fourth day. They went ahead and through the fifth day, through the sixth day, and followed through with the Lord's commands on that seventh day. I remember Naaman, he was very, very similar situation. He was told to be cleansed of his leprosy, to go dip himself in the Jordan River 7 times. And you remember what his response was? Like, why can't I do it at one of these? Yeah, like, why can't I do it at one of these other rivers? They're a lot prettier and cleaner than the Jordan. Why do I have to? But the instruction was 7 times in the Jordan River. Had he done it 6 times, he wouldn't have been cleansed of his leprosy. 7 times was the instruction. Same thing here. Had they stopped at day 4, this wouldn't have been fulfilled. This victory wouldn't have been fulfilled. So that persistent faith pays off. I follow through with the complete commands of God. Sometimes we want to stop short in our faith, or we want to pick and choose the things that we want to follow, the things that are convenient for us, the things that don't make us squirm too much, the things that are a little bit simpler. And so we'll kind of pick and choose, and that's not how faith works. Faith is complete. Faith is persistent. Faith follows all the way through to the end. And then also I noticed that everything in the city, silver, gold, every vessel of bronze and iron, all of it was devoted to the Lord. And it says devoted to the Lord for destruction. And just thinking about the message that God's sending here, here's an opportunity that the walls have come down, the people are destroyed. Let me go through and rummage through a few things and see if I can, get some wheat or get some new vessels or get some gold or silver, and let me build some family wealth. Like, let me take that back and keep it for my family. God says, no, this is devoted to me. I think the message is clear. You don't need these earthly treasures and earthly vessels. God's going to provide what you need. So as I look through both of these passages, and I haven't heard a bell yet, so I'm not even at the 5-minute mark. Good. As I look through these couple passages that we've looked at tonight, here's some lessons that I've pulled from it, and I'm sure there's plenty more, but these are the things that really stood out to me. There's an element of corporate faith involved in these passages that makes it different from the rest of the Hall of Faith cast. Do you kind of see that? Like, when you're looking at the rest of Hebrews 11, you have a lot of individual characters. And so when we get to verse 29 and 30, it's by faith of the people. This is us. Like, this is the church. This is the people. There's an element of corporate faith involved in these passages. Some grumbled and complained, some were loud, some were insecure, some were afraid, but they all moved in faith together. And I think it's important to remember that though we are one in Christ, individually, we are in different places and in different frames of mind. So as you think about that, as you think about uh, as you think about who we are as individuals, uh, remember that people are in different places, different frames of mind, and and we have to help move them along in faith. It's very similar when you think about these early Americans who helped assemble this U.S. Constitution. Different places, different perspectives. There was great oppression. It would have been easier to remain in England, yet they pressed forward for the greater good of the people. And so same thing as members of the body of Christ, we have a responsibility to more than ourselves. We have a responsibility to help each other grow in faith. And I have to understand that my faith has an impact on the faith of the church as a whole, right? So it's my responsibility to be faithful to God because my faith has an impact on my brother or sister who's sitting in the pew beside me. Lesson number 2 is, and I'm sure y'all have hit this one multiple times, but you can't ignore it. Faith and obedience are always joined together. Uh, you can go down every character in that list in Hebrews 11, and they were shown to be faithful because of their obedience. And faith and obedience are always joined together. You can't have faith without obedience. Um, John 3:36, a passage that just speaks to that. Jesus' words, he who believes in the Son has eternal life, but he who does not obey the Son will not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. The thing that's contradicted to belief is disobedience, right? So those two things, a belief, a faith is obedience. Disobedience is the opposite of that. And again, that list in Hebrews 11, all considered faithful because of their obedience to God's command. Lesson number 3 is presumption will get you killed. You think about the Egyptians. They thought they could pass through the Red Sea the same as the Israelites because that ground is dry. So they thought they could pass through the sea just like the Israelites did, but they were missing a key element, and that is faith in God. They didn't have that. And Paul reminds us that even the Israelites serve as a warning for us. He references this in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1 through 5. He says, "For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them, God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness." And he goes on in that passage. If you read through the rest of 1 Corinthians 10, it's warnings from Israel's idolatry, and he's reminding them, don't grumble, don't complain, don't flee from sexual immorality and idolatry. Verse 12 of that chapter says, "Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall." I think it's such a strong reminder of this isn't a once saved, always saved type of deal. This is faithful to the end. This is faithful to the point of death. And so for us to presume will get us killed, we continue walking in faith. Lesson number 4 is God will ask us to do things that don't make sense, right? Like think about the walls of Jericho. Think about walking through the sea. Think about the things that we practice today. Baptism. I mean, getting dunked in water for the cleansing of sin, or eating unleavened bread and drinking fruit of the vine to remember Jesus' death. Things that Jesus said, when your enemy strikes you on the cheek, turn to him the other also. Or I'm instructed to pray for my enemies. I'm instructed to feed them when they're hungry, to give them something to drink when they're thirsty, to overcome evil with good. I'm told to rejoice in trials, to expect suffering for doing good, and to tell others about the blessing of being in Christ. Um, and I'm reminded in Revelation chapter 2, verse 10, this is to the church in Smyrna. It says, "Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life." And lesson number 5, and I'll conclude here, is that faith positions us to watch God do what we cannot. We can't save ourselves. God can. We can't defeat Satan. God has. We can't face trials alone. God walks with us. We can't be perfect. Jesus sanctifies us. We cannot enter the gates of heaven on our own, but Jesus has prepared us a mansion. And so as you think about we as the people and as the church, what's my responsibility in the church? And what's my responsibility to God? And that is to live faithfully to the point of death, and so that He will give us the crown of life. Thank you all.